much. Um, yes. So so the type of counterpoint that we're going to focus on, we're only going to really make it through first species because it's really important to have these rules internalized and to continue practicing within the first species. Obviously, there's four species, which we'll get into, but we're only going to focus on the first one. And this is compositional counterpoint. So the whole purpose of this is, we're not going to be using accidentals. We're not going to be considering, the key exactly. We're kind of just focusing on modal counterpoint. So we have some Cantus firmus, Cantus fermi, fermo, and we'll use those as a starting point for building our counterpoint. But the overall goal, is to write something that is consonant and utilizes stepwise motion. So I'm going to share my screen so we can get into the nitty gritty here. I think today we will primarily focus on the rules, and we'll get an opportunity to start working on some of the actual counterpoint. But that's why in the schedule, there's intro to counterpoint 1, 2, and 3, because it's kind of a lot of it's kind of a lot of information. But once you have the information and once you're able to practice it a bit more, it comes quicker with time. So, all right, here we go. I typed up these kind of like rules, which I will also make sure to, I haven't done it yet, but I have obviously everyone's emails for like folks who signed up and attended the session. So when I get some time today, I'll send all of this stuff out to you all so that you have access to this. If you need to take a screenshot or whatever you want, while we're here, please do that. But I'll make sure to get you this document so that you can practice these on your own. But essentially, I got this document from, the program that I did, and it includes about 10 different, 11 actually, different baselines or Cantus fermi, in which we'll construct our species counterpoint. So like I said, what we're going to primarily focus on this week is first species counterpoint, which is 2 voices. So, 1-to-1. And this, for the sake of these exercises, we'll be doing just whole notes against whole notes. And, the essential purpose of this is the study of consonants. So, we're primarily listening for consonant intervals. We don't want any type of dissonance. We don't want any type of parallel fifths or anything like that. And we're also not using accidentals. So our two basic rules for constructing our first species counterpoint is that we cannot have 2 octaves or 2 fifths in a row from note to note across the counterpoint that you write on top of the Cantus fermi. And again, we're not going to use any accidentals. So, like I said, study of consonants, we're only going to include thirds, sixths, fifths, and octaves. You can use a maximum of 3 thirds or 3 sixths in a row. The reason for that is if you have 4, 5, 6 thirds or sixths in a row, that's just a harmonization. It's not a counterpoint. It's not a counter melody. It's not a contrapuntal line. So if you have more than 3 in a row, you need to change the counterpoint because then you're just harmonizing the line, and that's not the purpose of this. The next 2 rules are kind of rules about leaping. So how we define leap is by moving more than a step at a time. So, like I said, the overall goal is to try to create a contrapuntal line that moves in the most stepwise motion. So if you have to go up a third or up a fourth or up a fifth or up a sixth, that's going to be a leap. And when you do choose to leap in the counterpoint, if you leap up, so like let's say you go from an A to up to a C, if you leap up, your next motion should be a step down. So if you go A up to C, then you have to step down to B. Otherwise, you break the rules of the counterpoint. And vice versa. If you leap down, so let's say you go from C to A. If you leap down from A, your next step has to be up. So you still go C down to A and then up to B. Additionally, you cannot have leaps in the same direction. So that kind of like justifies the last two rules we had. You can't go A, leap up to C, and then leap up to E. Not allowed. You also cannot outline a tritone in one direction. Let me see, I think there's an example of that here. Yes, so the rules for the tritone, just making sure that that your contrapuntal line, especially like as it's going like up, or if it's going down primarily, like we have in these two examples here, you don't want to outline a tritone at all. And if you don't know, if that rule seems confusing to you, don't worry about it. It's probably one of the last things you check for, and we can focus on that a little bit more later. Additionally, unisons are only allowed in the first and last measure. So when we get into starting and finishing the counterpoint, which is these rules down here, I think that's kind of, I'll just jump down here for a second. Again, in your first and last measure, those are the only opportunities in which you can use a unison. So in the first measure, if the counterpoint is above the cantus firmus, which means, if the cantus firmus is the baseline and you're writing the counterpoint on top of that, you have to start your first measure either with a perfect octave, perfect fifth, or a major third in that first measure. And in the last measure, you can only end with an octave or a perfect fifth. And then if you're to switch it, if your counterpoint, like if you use the cantus firmus on top and you're writing counterpoint below, you can only start your counterpoint with a perfect octave or unison, and then your last measure can only be a perfect octave or a unison. We probably won't do any counterpoint below the cantus firmus today, so again, don't stress yourself out about it. And then just to reiterate the intervals in which we're allowed to use here for leaps. While this is a study of consonants, it is okay to leap a dissonant interval of like a minor second or a minor third. But that's only from note to note. So you can't have like a minor, or I mean, you can have a minor third, but you can't have a minor second or perfect fourth or a major seven or a minor seven between your cantus firmus and your counterpoint. So these are all the intervals that are allowed. And then for the sake of these exercises, you don't want to leap up a major sixth. You also don't want to leap up or down any type of augmented or diminished interval, because this is modal counterpoint. It's kind of like thinking about you have to consider the key center, but you're not considering like accidentals and that sort of thing. And then finally, just you don't want to leap up or down major or minor sevenths. It's just not what we're gonna do in the first species. So now I want to show you, have our handy dandy rules here. Does anybody have any questions so far? Okay. Okay. All right. So, like I said, we have this document that has a couple of different cantus firmi already put together for us. And so I put together an example of how we're going to create these from the cantus firmi. So what you'll notice is that this first cantus, the first cantus firmi is here. I've written a counterpoint off of it here, and then we'll do one together. And the second cantus firmi is from here. We'll write one of those together. I think it's important to, take a listen to these very quickly. It's going to kind of move a little bit slow. I'm going to see if I can make it go faster. But it is okay to listen to or play through the cantus firmus first, just to orient your ears. If that's a practice that you feel like you need to do. I know for me, like this is more of like a theoretical. It's less of like a creative skill I'm developing. It's really like understanding the rules and understanding and being really intentional about the intervals and that sort of thing. So I typically, it's like fine to listen to the cantus firmus. And then obviously after you write your counterpoint, you want to listen to it because you want to make sure you're not hearing any dissonance for this species. But I would not recommend doing first species counterpoint or really doing any of this counterpoint and trying to do it by ear and relying on your ear to help you create a contrapuntal line, because your ear recognizes the sounds that you like and recognizes a lot of different things that don't exist within these parameters. So really rely on your musicianship and your sense of, I guess, intellect in this case, but you don't necessarily want to get, like, it's a practice in creativity, but it's structured creativity. So like respect the rules, make what you want to make, but also like, don't be frustrated because you can't put parallel fifths and just because you like the way that it sounds. Like that's not the point of these exercises. So let's listen to this first one here. And additionally, the way that we're going to go about doing these counterpoints together is we'll take a listen to the cantus firmus first, and then these numbers in between the staves are the intervals between the top and the bottom line. So obviously, like the first thing we'll do is listen, then we'll add, we'll decide if we're going to start from the beginning or the end, and then we'll go in together and write this counterpoint. And just so you know, one of the best and worst parts about this process is that you are going to have to change your counterpoint a lot. Like you'll get halfway through and some of the rules might not work out and you're going to have to change the counterpoint. There's a lot of different strategies, starting from the end, starting from the beginning, starting from, the leapiest point in the counterpoint, really it's kind of like choose your own destiny as long as you create the counterpoint and respect the rules. But there's not like a, in the last session, when we were talking about transcription, there's like kind of like an order of processes. It's not really uniform in that same way for writing for species counterpoint. So if you get to a point and you're like, oh, like I'm at the penultimate measure, and now I have to like rearrange my whole counterpoint because there's a fourth in the middle there. Like that is okay. That is normal. That is going to happen. Prepare yourself for it because this stuff can take a lot of mental energy, but it's really, really good. And the more you practice it, the easier it becomes, obviously. And what I'm going to recommend doing is like spending at least 10 to 15 minutes a day practicing this, and you only have to do one. Like it's gonna take some time to even just create one. This is not like something that happens very quickly at the drop of the hat. This is an intentional exercise about us learning the rules, respecting the intervals, and understanding the relationships between these two melodic lines. So here is just an example of a first species counterpoint that abides by all the rules. Okay. So what you'll notice here is like, we don't have more than 3 of these consonant intervals in a row. So we have, the most that we have is 2 in a row. In this particular counterpoint, there's no 6th, but that's okay. And yeah, I decided to start with a octave in the first measure and the last measure. And yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. So now we'll go ahead and do one together. Everyone is going to help write this, so be prepared to answer when I call you on. It is okay if you say something wrong or you don't know. We are learning this and we are practicing this together. So don't feel nervous. I remember when I was doing this for the first time, like it was at the end of my undergrad, and everybody had kind of been studying music for so long, and I felt so incompetent because I just could not do this stuff quickly, and like had not practiced thinking about my intervals and stuff as much as some of the other kids in the classes had. So this is no pressure. This is supposed to be fun. So it's okay if you don't know, and it's okay if you say the wrong thing, but we are going to do this together. So okay, I'm just gonna go down the list here. So Alex, do you remember how we're supposed to start? What are our options to start or end our counterpoint? Is Alex here? Yes. Okay, so cool. Let's see. So here we have this section about the ways in which we can begin and end our counterpoint. So because we are writing counterpoint above the cantus firmus, we can either start with an octave, a perfect fifth, or major third. So we have C in the bass. How would you like to start? Any of them is fine. Which one? Octave? Okay. Thank you, Alex. Okey-doke. So we're gonna put the C here, and we're gonna change this to an 8. Awesome. So Anthony, now, typically the way that it has been taught to me is like, after you decide how you want to start or how you want to finish. Yeah.
So is it like when you're saying that's like would it middle C make it like that's
Alex,
Yeah.
could you
So you want the
unmute?
lower one?
well I mean I don't really but like we can like
No, you're right.
it's really be a hot
Yeah, I mean, but either way, because in this case, like when we do this type of counterpoint, we don't do like the extended intervals. So like in this case, it wouldn't be like it wouldn't be like, we wouldn't put that it's 16, or like whatever. It would still be 8. So it's fine just for this. And like we're not gonna put 10 like with the actual intervals, like between the bass and the counterpoint. That's a great question though. Oh, okay. So basically Alex was just asking, for those of us who didn't hear, Alex was just asking about the octave situation, because I had the C up here, which is really like 2 octaves. But for the sake of the exercise, it doesn't really matter. Like if it's 1 octave above or it's 2 octave above, we'll still count it as an octave. Yeah, so no worries there. Okay. So our next course of action is going to be to address the quote unquote leapiest part of the counterpoint, which Anthony, what do you think is the leapiest part happening in the cantus firmus? Like between which measures is there a lot of leaping happening?
Let's see. When from the E to the, no, is that A? There's a, that's a big skip.
You said from the E to the A?
I think it's
Okay.
A.
So if that's our leapiest part, that's kind of the part that we want to start, quote unquote, is one of the places that we can use as a starting point for shaping our whole contrapuntal line. So Daisy, if we're gonna start trying to write a counterpoint, you know, starting at this E here, what is you know, an option that we can put in our counterpoint? So remember, these are the intervals that we're allowed to use. You know, we're primarily trying to do thirds, sixths, and fifths. So what note do you want to put in this measure?
Can I see the list again?
Sorry?
Can I see the list again?
Yeah.
Let's try major six.
You want to
No,
do a major six?
I meant minor six, sorry.
Okay, so you want G. All right. So we've got a G there. 6. Great. And then you're right. This is why we do this together, because nobody is perfect, including myself. So yes, if you also like, do not feel like you are offending me if you're like, this interval is wrong, because I am only human. So I appreciate the help. Okay, so we have a third. Benji, which direction do you want to go next? So we can either keep writing towards the end, or we can go back and try to connect the beginning to this kind of middle measure here.
Let's go to the end.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Let's go to the end.
Okay, so in this next measure, what note do you want to pick?
How about C up an octave? So it's a third again, but it's up.
Okay. Beautiful. Thank you, Benji. Pause. Eric, what time is your next session at? Okay, cool. Okay, I could not remember what time. Perfect. All right. Iggy. So because we just words, because we just leaped, what do we have to do next? Step down. So, but what happens when we step down? It becomes an octave, right? So, and remember, we have to start and end, you know, it has to be either an octave or a fifth here. And exactly. You said, can you jump down to a what? Can the ending be a jump? No. Yeah, you can't leap to the end of a counterpoint, because then you can't step up. Yeah. So that's a good question too. So all right. For the sake of this, you know, so we have to fix, now we have to go back and fix this, because we can't have these parallel we can't have these parallel octaves. So Lucas,
Yes.
how can we change this? It's gonna be in one of these three measures here. What would you do to help resolve this issue for us?
Can we have three thirds in a row, or is it only two?
You can have 3 thirds in a row. Yeah.
Well, in that case, you could just take the second last chord or second last counterpoint, and at the top note go up to a D. Would that work?
ECD 333. Yes. I think that's okay. Beautiful. Oh, yes, yes. So we have to
Because you have to go down. Yes, never mind.
yeah, so I mean, yes, I think that this da 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 da. So what we could do is either change this measure or change this measure. But since you said we're gonna go up to the D, then Daisy, since this was your measure, how can we change this particular measure so that it is more cohesive?
Since
So instead of this G,
Yeah.
you said to put it where?
we'll put it at B since it's going step.
Up to the B.
Yeah.
So then you have what interval?
uh, 5.
Good. Do. Perfect. Okay, Alex. So now, what's our next note gonna be? You can either go second measure or fourth measure, whatever strategy you really want to do.
Maybe fourth. Not sure.
The fourth measure?
Yeah.
Okay, what note?
And then, wait, so it has to be a certain number, right?
Sorry?
It has to be like a fifth, third, or eighth,
Or sixth?
or sixth. Okay. You do the same as the one before. So I think it will be a sixth.
So B?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, something that I did not talk about that I want to talk about now because it's my favorite contrapuntal technique is that we can't have repeated notes, but what we can have is octave leaps. So an octave leap is also not considered a leap. It's considered it's considered stepwise motion. So we can use this B here, but we have to put it down the octave so that it's not so that it doesn't disrupt the contrapuntal rules. So if you can leap up an octave, and so you don't have to step down after that.
Oh.
It's just considered stepwise. So I'm glad that you chose that. And we have a sixth here. Beautiful. Anthony.
Most notes F, so you could, and then you could do a third, right? Because, I mean, no, you can't.
So you want to do A?
Yeah. I mean, I don't really know, but
Okay. All right. And then Benji. What should we put in there for our last measure?
That's easy. It's a D.
Sorry, say that again.
D. D.
Yeah.
Okay.
You said D? D as in dog. Okay, and that gives us what interval?
A fifth.
Okay. So everything looks great, except now we have a parallel fifth and a parallel octave. So this is one of those moments in which it's like, oh, the counterpoint is there, but now we have to fix the thing. So actually, you know, like I said, our options to begin the counterpoint is that we can start with a perfect fifth, a perfect octave, or a major third. So in this case, I'll contribute. And we can actually just move this up to E, which will be our major third. And that way we don't have to go through and change anything else. So let's take a listen to this beautiful counterpoint that we just wrote together. Measure 9. Yay, beautiful. Great job, everybody. We did it. Our first counterpoint together, it's all good. And it's different, you know, it's different than the first one. There's some similarities, but very, very different, depending on what strategy you use, depending on where you start, depending on how you end. There's a million different ways to do this. So again, when I send out the information later, I will give you all the Cantus Firmus, to practice. And since you're here today, I would totally recommend, you know, if you actually like this and it's fulfilling to you, like attend the rest of the sessions, because we're just going to keep building on this. And again, when I send out the Cantus Firmus, when I send out the information later, I'll send you the Cantus Firmus so that the next time we have this class, or the next time we have the next counterpoint session, you can bring the counterpoint that you worked on your own. So, do you have any questions? How do we feel about that? Was that super scary, or was it kind of fun? Good. Okay, cool. That means I did my job. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for showing up, and we'll see you later.